Hi everyone, my name is Vineet Singal and I'm the co-founder and CEO of CareMessage, which is a non-profit health technology company that builds software that clinics and hospitals in medically underserved areas of the United States can utilize for the purpose of communicating more effectively with their patients. Back in 2007, when I was still in high school, I struggled with being morbidly obese and was diagnosed with prediabetes at the age of 17. And it was a very difficult time for me because I was transitioning from high school to college, and I'd always had a lot of personal issues with my health concerns, with my physical and mental health. Obviously suffering as a result of my disease. And one of the things that happened during my first 2 years in college at Stanford was that I lost over 100 pounds in the process of completely reversing my obesity and my prediabetes. It was by far the most difficult thing that I'd ever done in my life, and also the most meaningful for me. It changed not only the way that I looked and the way that my physical health, had improved, but also the way in which I thought about my potential. And one of the things I became really fascinated by was the way in which chronic disease affects people, and the way in which simple interventions can improve the way that patients manage chronic conditions, just like I had growing up as a pre-diabetic. And I decided to take some time off from school and go work in a free medical clinic in Galveston, Texas. And I was one of 2.5 full-time staff members in this free medical clinic that existed primarily to serve patients without access to proper health insurance. And I was doing everything from patient histories to physical exams to point-of-care testing for hundreds of patients on a regular basis. And I was 19 years old at the time, so I had no business doing any of this. But because the clinic was so understaffed and so under-resourced, my help was actually incredibly important for the clinic to actually function properly. And that's where I realized that there was a tremendous need for resources to help patients that were struggling with multiple chronic conditions, that were taking 10 or 15 or even in some cases 20 medications a day, and did not have access to any resources or support to help them along that process. And I compared their situation with my own, in which I had access to my parents, who are both physicians, the best coaches, the best nutritionists, the best personal trainers, went to a good school with access to a lot of friends and a community that I could rely upon, versus the patients that I was seeing on a daily basis. These patients were struggling with issues that were far greater and far more dangerous than my own, yet had access to maybe a 5 to 10 minute session with a doctor twice a year and nothing else. There was no follow-up, there was no support, there was nothing to help them manage a very difficult, a very challenging chronic conditions, in some cases multiple chronic conditions. So for me, it seemed like an unfair dichotomy. It seemed like an unfair system in which the patients that need the most amount of help and support aren't the ones that are getting it. And I decided to do something about it. So a couple years later, when I graduated from Stanford, I had the choice to either go to medical school at a couple of really incredible places versus starting this organization that I was really passionate about. And I decided to do the latter, and essentially started a technology company that essentially focuses on using mobile technology to help empower patients that are struggling with difficult to manage and difficult to treat chronic conditions, including type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, congestive heart failure, COPD, asthma, depression, etc. And over the last 2 years, we have built a really powerful, versatile, dynamic software solution that dozens of clinics and hospitals across the country are now using to better communicate and engage and empower their patients to manage difficult to treat and difficult to manage chronic conditions. Some of the principles of entrepreneurship can be learned relatively quickly, especially when it comes to things like fundraising, when it comes to pitching to an audience, whether it's a donor, whether it's an investor, or whether it's a customer. I think those are things that can be learned. But the one thing that I think cannot be learned or cannot be acquired through external sources is that internal passion or that internal motivation that drives you and keeps you moving forward despite numerous failures and despite setbacks. And so I think that that's probably the key to becoming a more effective social entrepreneur, is really finding that fire, finding that passion. And I think once you have that, one of the things that has been a very powerful lesson for me is being able to say, I don't know, and being able to collect feedback from people that are much smarter, much more experienced than you, and being able to incorporate that feedback in a way that makes your decisions much more data-driven and ultimately much more effective. One of the ways in which we have incorporated that is every single time that we have to make a decision that reflects, kind of the direction that the organization wants to move in, we have a consensus model within the organization itself in which every single team member's, every single individual's opinion is considered, regardless of whether or not that decision is something that they may have expertise on. Because we believe that no opinion, no viewpoint is invalid, because there are a number of different potential possibilities for ways in which decisions can be made. And then we have a group of advisors and a group of experts in different categories, in research, in clinical, in customer relations, in sales and marketing, that provide more expert guidance. But then that's coupled with the experiential learning that we have been able to acquire through our own experiences, working directly with our stakeholders, including the patients and the clinics and hospitals that we work with. So I think that a very deliberate and concerted approach to decision making that incorporates the feedback of your users and your customers and the internal stakeholders, coupled with the advice of experts and people that actually have a lot of experience in the field, has been a very important source of guidance and expertise for us to be able to make more effective decisions moving forward. If you are really passionate about something, a problem, some sort of issue that you think needs to be solved and it's not being solved right now, or not being solved in a way that you feel is the way to do it, definitely go for it. And then surrounding yourself with really smart people that you can work with. But even if you can't work with them, then that's people that you can turn to for advice or insights or motivation in some cases. Has been a very important and powerful decision for me personally, including someone like Laura Arrillaga-Andreessen, who has been an incredible source of advice and mentorship.